What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. So we are here at the White Castle in Osu.
First of all, you're welcome to Christiansborg Castle. So mostly you hear Osu Castle. That's because the area is called Osu rather than Christiansborg. So before we enter to have a look at the place, I'll give you a brief introduction. As part of the tour, you're allowed to take pictures, ask questions as well. So the castle was built by the Danes, that's people of Denmark, in 1661. But in order for them to have access here, they were here in 1659, purchased the land from Akwamu. He was the local ruler of Osu by then. But before the Danes occupied here, the first people to have used here were the Portuguese. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to have arrived in Ghana, 1471, in the central part here, in a place we called Elmina. In 1482, they built the Elmina Castle, which is the first castle to have been built in West Africa. So they wanted to expand their territory. So around the 1550s, they moved from Elmina, came to this place, built a lodge where they traded with the locals for so long. Until 1652, the Swedish came to break the monopoly of the trade the Portuguese were enjoying. They also built a lodge, replaced it with the one the Portuguese had built. They were here briefly from 1652 up until 1659, when the Danes came to purchase the land, making it legal. So they replaced it with a stone fort. So theirs was durable as compared to the others. Everything you see here wasn't built at once. As and when they needed spaces, additional ones were added. And as and when the additions were made, years were attached to them. That is how come here I'm saying 1661. But the entrance, together with the ones you see in there, we have different dates attached to them. And they named the place Christiansborg after their king, King Christian IV of Denmark, who was then in charge of Norway as well. So aside the Danes being here, the castle changed two hands. Portuguese were here again for the second time, 1679. They added a chapel. In 1693, when the slave trade reached its peak, we had Ghanaians by name Akwamu people. They also defeated the Danes, took over this castle for a year. This was from 1693 to 1694. In 1850, the Danes sold this castle to the British, for £10,000. So they moved their headquarters from Cape Coast. Here became the headquarters for the British in 1877. So after the partition of Africa in 1884, they became our colonizers. So they were here ruling us from here until Ghana gained independence in 1957. So after independence, we had our very first Prime Minister and first President, Dr. Kwame, deciding to use here as a seat of government. And it remained so until 2013. So the last time here was used was in 2012. Unfortunately, we had our last president who used it. He died whilst he was still the president in 2012. So in 2013, the seat of government was moved from here to the Jubilee House. When we enter, we have different things to see. Where we are standing, this is the courtyard where the slave market was taking place. There are a number of dungeons as well. We have 12 of them here. There's also a water system they constructed to collect rainwater for their domestic use. There is a queen's room here. Queen Elizabeth II came to Ghana in 1961, so we have the room with the bed she used while she was here. There's Rawlings' office. He was our longest serving president and the only Ghanaian president to have used the old castle as his office. All the others, though they lived here, they administrated in the new castle. The difference between the new and the old castle is that the old was added by the Europeans, the new was added after independence during our very first president's time. There's also the chapel the Portuguese added. When we are done with the inside, there's a staircase that will take us outside, which mostly term as the door of no return. It's the last exit from the castle and then African soil. So once you're out of that door, no, you're not going to come back. That is how come we have the door of no return. And the Danes sent their slaves to the Danish West Indies. We now know it as the U.S. Virgin Islands, so St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John's, to go and work on the sugarcane plantations. As I mentioned earlier, everything wasn't built at once. Wherever you see the 1797, the C7, is standing for King Christian VII of Denmark. So they named it to honor their king. MCMXII, that was added by the British, that's 1912. When you move on top, there's 1950. There's 1921, 1950 here. So as and when additions were made, years were attached to them. So let's head into the dungeon for us to have a look in there. Okay, so this is one of the dungeons. As I mentioned, we have 12 dungeons in here. Once the slaves arrive in the courtyard where we stood, so they had to inspect them and then separate the weaker ones from the stronger ones. Weaker ones are treated for a while. You don't recover, you die. There's nothing like burial. You be dumped into the sea. The stronger ones are then branded. So each and every slave merchant, they had their own symbol, which is a metal. It to be put in hot fire, placed against the slave skin. So aside the branding and inspection, they move them into the dungeon while they wait for the ships to get here. So once the slaves are here, they are not allowed to go out. Here served as everything for them. So they eat here, poop, urinate, everything in here. Between 3 to 6 months, this is where the slaves would be. Most of them died before the ships could arrive. Some also become infected due to the unsanitary conditions in which they were being kept in. The males were separated from the females. They were not mixed together. What we have over here was serving as the latrine, where they were supposed to pass their stool, vomit. But due to the crowded nature, you're in chains and shackles. You're at the far end, you can't make your way here, meaning you have to do it right where you are. We have the window for ventilation. From the window, you can see the thickness of the wall. Then we have the hole at the top, source of sunlight. Then where we are, the dungeon, maximum of 60 people were kept in each. So about 60 here, about 60 in there. So when the slave trade reaches its peak, you can have about 120 in total. According to their own records in Denmark, approximately 100,000 slaves came from here alone to the Danish West Indies. That's those that made it there, excluding the dead ones. Do you have questions before we head on? Okay. Okay, so this is a water system constructed during one of the Danish governors' time. So his name was Carl Engman in the year 1753. Before he became the Danish governor, he was first a surgeon who came here to treat the administrators that lived here before he himself became the Danish governor. So this is mainly to collect rainwater for their domestic use. Holes were channeled when it rains, it comes directly. But since we had our president here, it's no more in use to prevent mosquitoes from breeding. He married a Ghan princess from this town by name Ashokai. That is how come when you come to Osu here, we still have names like Engman in our society till date. Now I refer to them as half caste, but back in the day, we refer to them as mulattoes. So a child from an African and then a white person. That's why. Okay, so since we are going, let's just talk about it from here. So this is a chapel. Oh, sorry. So this is the chapel. As I mentioned earlier, the castle changed two hands. The Portuguese gained access here in 1679. They added this chapel. Because they are Roman Catholics, they raised the walls higher, added a chapel on top of one of the dungeons. So while they pray here, slaves are down there. They were here briefly from 1679 to 1683. They left here in 1683. The Danes came back, continued with their trading activities until 1693. So I mentioned earlier we had Ghanaians also defeating the Danes, taking over. This picture we have over here, his name is Asemini. He became the first black governor of Christiansborg. So he's from a town called Akwamu, which is in the eastern part. Back in the day, they were the warlords of the coastal areas. Very powerful kingdom. So in time, he became a cook for the Danes, at the same time an interpreter. So by being a cook for them, he studied them, got to know their weaknesses and all. He then returned home, came back with 80 men who pretended to be traders coming to buy guns from the Danes. And back in the day, when you buy the guns, you are made to test it out in the courtyard before you take it with you. Unknown to the Danes, these people had hidden gunpowders with them. The same guns they bought, these are the same guns killed them. And he and his people, they took over the fort for a year. It was from 1693 to 1694. Unfortunately, he still continued with the slave trade whilst he was here. He continued with the Dutch, the British that were nearby. During the attack between the Danes and his people, only one person survived. Johnson, he was a Danish governor by then. He was able to jump the wall, swam all the way to Fort Quebecois, which is in Jamestown. Now we know it as Asher Fort. So it was the Dutch that helped treated him of his wounds. Months later, they helped him to report to the King of Denmark that their fort had been conquered by a Ghanaian. So the year of the Ghanaians being here, the Danes came back because they wanted the place back. So they came to negotiate with Asemini. So negotiating with him, he decided to hand over the castle to them after he was paid 50 marks of gold. He gave them the castle all right, but while I was going, he took the keys of the castle to his hometown. As we speak now, the original keys of this castle is in Akwamu. The same way you get to visit here, they have a small museum where they display the keys for people to come have a look at it. Along going to the town, there's a statue of him, by the way, 100 keys, one with gun, to show that a man from their place became the first black governor of Christiansborg. During the Danish era, this was where they officiated the marriages between they themselves and then the West African women. So there are children who are of mixed race We used the term mulattoes for them. So here served as a school for the mulattoes while they were here. So initially when the Europeans arrived, language barrier, they didn't know how to communicate with the locals. So when they started getting involved with them, they had to educate them. So since they set up a school here for them, the child helped reach the language barrier because they get to learn both the language of the mother, the father. They became the mediators of the trade. Our last president by name Atta Mills, whilst he was in the castle, here was a church for him. So he used to fellowship here. That is how come we have these drums here. So they are all just additions. Then we also have a church here by name Presbyterian Church of Ghana. This was where it started in 1828. So we had the Basel missionaries from Switzerland. They arrived here in 1828 to spread the word, Christianize us here. Unfortunately, first 4 missionaries that arrived, they all died of malaria. Another missionaries were sent, 2 missionaries and a doctor to treat them in case they get sick. But unfortunately, the doctor died together with the missionary, leaving just a survivor. So the survivor remained. He also later became sick. He was then advised by his friend to move to the eastern part, Ebri. He then decided to stay there, treated by an unknown herbalist. He recovered, so he remained there. That is how come when you go to the eastern part currently, we have a lot of Presbyterian schools and churches over there. Okay, so you can have a look at the view for a minute. We'll continue. Yeah, it's right.
That is a fishing village?
Yeah, so these are all fishing communities. When it comes to the Ghana communities, that's Greater Accra, their main occupation is fishing. So the Labadi we're asking of, you see where that tall building is at the far end. So this is Osu, all the way leading to Labadi Beach.
So Labadi is the other side?
Yes, it's going that way. Where that tall building is at the far end, that's Labadi. Yeah. Okay, so whilst our presidents were here, the top part served as the official residence. So they lived here until 2013. Yeah. So we are heading to the Queen's Room. Yeah. Okay, so this is the Queen's Room. Ghana gained independence 3rd of March 1957. April 27, 1960, there was a referendum that was held for Ghana to transition into a republican state. So 1st July 1960, Ghana became a republican country. That was when we Ghanaians became totally free from the British. Queen Elizabeth II was supposed to have been here to see to the transition. That wasn't possible. She came a year after, just in 1961. So this was the very room she used while she was here. It used to be bigger than what you are seeing currently, but part of it has been used as a maritime office we have over there. So we also have a school here in Ghana called Achimota Senior High School, built during the British time. So during the school's 50th anniversary, King Charles, that's Queen Elizabeth's son, also graced the occasion. He also slept here whilst he was in Ghana. According to history of the castle, mother and son are the only ones to have used it, not even our president. So there have been a lot of changes like the tiles, the sheets, they are just additions. So what we are showing here is the wood itself, the wardrobe, and the side lamps as well. There's also the balcony here, you can take a walk through, then we move on. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we had our presidents living in the old castle, where we have the small black cell, that's the new castle joined together with the old castle. So they lived in the old, administrated in the new, except one Ghanaian president. He decided to use the old castle as his office. So we are going to go in there to find out why. This way. Okay. So this part of the office was added in 1921 by the British governor, Sir Gordon Gottisbeck. He used it first. Later on in 1981, we had our very own Ghanaian president, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, deciding to use it for security reasons. He came to power through a military coup d'etat in 1981, where he overthrew a civilian ruler by name Hila Liman, took over from him. So he had to be cautious about it. He chose it for security reasons, being that while he was here, he could see all the way through the first gate. That is how come he decided to use it. So he was our longest serving president, 19 years in total, 11 years military, 8 years as a civilian ruler. So 1981 to 1992, he stepped down from 11 years military ruling. Then he became the first military ruler to have ushered us into the democracy we are enjoying now from 1992 to 2000. So 11 years military, 8 years civilian ruling, he used this office. He was a mulatto, half Scottish, half Ghanaian, mom Ghanaian from the Volta region, dad from Scotland. He was also a pilot in the Air Force as a military man. So when you look straight ahead in the garden where we have the cemented portion, he was serving as a helipad, a spot for a helicopter. So there'll always be one there when there's danger, he can leave here to safety. He has put these measures in place because he overthrown someone also tried to do to him as well. Unfortunately, he's late now. We lost him in 2020, so he's no more.
Oh, maybe so.
Yeah. Amen. So let's go there. Let me talk about the garden. So these are all cannon holes for defense. The door of no return. The last exits from the castle and then the African soil. Okay, so this is the staircase taking us to the door of no return. They made it in a spiral form so that they can count the number of slaves going down there, one after the other. 2 people cannot use the staircase as a goal. Once you're out of here, no, you're not going to go back. While they're in chains and shackles, they'll be counting that. So let's head down to have a look at it. Hello. Please, let's come. This is called the Richter Tunnel. There was a Danish slave merchant. His name was Johann Richter. He was also dealing in slaves, just that his was private from the one that was going on in there. So he acted as a representative of the Danish governor from time to time. So he built his home in the town about 600 meters away from here. Had dungeons within his home where he kept slaves in there. Then built an underground tunnel linking his home to the castle here. So when the ships are ready, he can easily march them from his home through the tunnel, ship them off through the door of no return. He had 2 illegitimate children with a woman from this town. Later on in 1809, he acknowledged the kids, Christian Richter and Heinrich Richter, to be his sons. He introduced them to the trade, so they also continued after the dad passed. It became a family business. As at the time he was doing it, it was illegal because the Danes had already abolished the slave trade. So before in 1862, there was an earthquake, which happened in 1862. So after the earthquake, that part is blocked. It's no more leading to his home and back. But before the earthquake, this was supposed to take you to his home and back, but after it's blocked. Though the earthquake affected his home deeply, some parts are still there. It's about 10 minutes walk from here. So his descendants are living there currently. When you come to Ghana here, we still have names like Richter and all that. Yeah.
So how many slaves died?
Okay, so we don't have the statistics. So we don't have the statistics. The only thing we have is the number of slaves that made it there, according to their own records in Denmark, which is approximately 100,000 slaves. Yeah. So this is the door of no return. As I said, the staircase is in a spiral form. So once you're out of here, you're not going to go back. Smaller boats will be here waiting for them to be transported into the bigger ships in the middle passage. And most of the slaves that were kept here were from the inlands. They've not come across sea before. So definitely, the mere sight of seeing is scarce there. So either you survive and make it to the Danish West Indies or you die along the way. According to history, 1619 was when the first slave ship left Africa to America, Virginia specifically. So 1690 to 2019, that marked 400 years. In 2019, Ghana government initiated something we call the Year of Return. So the diasporans, wherever they are, they can return home. So Ghana opened its doors for them. Most of them came, irrespective of where you are from. In 2020, a similar thing was introduced, which we call Beyond the Return, signifying the same thing as a Year of Return in 2019. So this will be held every decade, probably in 2030. There might be another one as well. Ghana later joined something we call the Emancipation Day, generally celebrated in the Caribbean, to mark the end of the chattel slavery in the British colonies in 1834. Ghana joined in 1998 during the man that we just came from his office's time, Jerry John Rawlings, to reaffirm that the diasporans can return home. So when we joined the same year, 1998, 2 remains were brought back. The Crystal from Jamaica, Samuel Carson from US. They were already dead and buried, but their remains were exhumed, placed in a boat, just like how they were transported during the slave trade era. So they used them to pass through the Cape Coast door of no return. Some ceremonies were performed, so the chains of slavery is now broken. That is how come when you come to Ghana here, all the door of no return is now door of return. So the saints, they were brought back, and they're buried at Asemanso Riverside. That's where the slaves used to have their last bath before they are being transported to their various destinations. And in 2019, other remains from Barbados were also brought, buried alongside the 2 others. So you see 3 tombs when you visit Asemanso. So we are now going to the garden, and we're right here. Okay, so we have a beautiful garden here, but it comes with a sad history. So this used to be the home of the locals here, the indigenes. We call them Usualatan. They had their thatch houses and everything here before their king sold part to the Danes to build their castle. So the locals were here, the Danes were also there. In 1803, Denmark, they were the first country to stop the exploitation of the slave trade. Initially, the act was passed in 1792, but it wasn't fully enforced until 1803. But that with the 1803 wasn't entirely. The rest of the slaves they couldn't ship off, they used them on a tamarind plantation they started at the left-hand side of the garden, stretching all the way to the town, also Salem, Abercrombie, Sesame, and Legon Botanical Gardens. Around 1814, Denmark lost Norway to Sweden, which was then under them. They experienced a lot of financial crisis. So in 1850, they decided to sell all their possessions in West Africa to the British for £10,000. So when they sold it off, and then the British occupied it in 1850. In 1852, they then decided to introduce taxes to the locals here to pay, which is 1 shilling per person. The locals didn't understand why a stranger will come here, demand taxes from them, so they also refused to pay. 13th September in 1854, the British bombarded their homes, moving them farther away from here. So the garden you see there was done by the British after they expelled the locals. Currently, the space is used for events, other weddings, birthday party, photo shoots, when you be allowed to use the grounds. You know what a shrine is? You know a shrine? Yeah, a shrine. So the shrine at the far end, the right-hand side, they belong to the locals here. So they have a festival they celebrate every year in August, which is called the Homo Festival. So during this festival, they're allowed to come in here to pay homage to their ancestors, since this was the original home before they were expelled from here. So whether a person is sleepy or not, they are still allowed entry. That's all. So this is the end of the tour. If you have questions, ask them again.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Yeah, guys, so this basically marks to the end of our video. It's really so sad to see how the blacks were treated, how they were treated for nothing, guys. Oh my God. So please feel free to let me know in the comment section what you feel or what you think about today's video. It is very emotional to me, guys, but it was really lovely to have a lovely tour guide who has explained everything to us. Yeah, subscribe, like, and share. See you all in our next one. Bye.